Hello, Martha, and hello, viewers. Hey, this is the first. I'm John Merrifield, the CEO of the Institute for Objective Policy Assessment. Obviously, a little nervous. This is the first in a series on K through 12 captivity, something that most of you are familiar with, having had your children assigned to a neighborhood public school. But I would venture to say that almost no one, including the two of us, is totally conversant with all of the effects of assigning a child to a specific public school. Here to start us on that journey is our institute partner, Martha Bradley Dorsey, the director of the K through 12 Center for K through 12 Captivity Studies. Martha?
Thank you, John, for that introduction. I started this center and why I think it's so important to be in this space. Sorry, I had to get all my little buttons clicked.
That's all right.
I started the Center for K-12 Captivity Studies because it's one thing to say that you have a position on this highly polarizing issue that really pits the current public education system against those who favor markets. And that sounds so simple and so trite that I started to think everyone thinks it's just a bias, and everyone thinks it's just being with the Hatfields or the McCoys. It was important to me to show exactly what it is about this system, this public school system, that I believe is faulted and that I believe is causing harm to our students. So I began the study with that in mind. I also believe that it's important to understand other things, and that is why the current school choice battle might be weak as well. What we're going to do here in this first session, though, is just really talk about what we mean by captivity, because without knowing that, without knowing the basis of that, you lose the point of why it is that we're on this journey in the first place. So we're going to talk here about how captivity is built into the current American public school system and what it is that we suspect that causes and some of the problems that are created because of that. To start that off, I'm going to, let's see, there we go. I need to learn how to shift slides in this. Okay, this is a slide from EdChoice.org. And what this shows, for everybody who's not familiar with that organization, they really are the quintessential keeper of data about school choice in America. There are other organizations that do it as well, but EdChoice certainly is one of the preeminent organizations that does that. What this chart shows is the results of their most recent parent preference survey research. What parents prefer, the type of school parents prefer, is shown in the left-hand sort of double circle graph, and what enrollment really is in the country is shown on the right. So you can see that 39% of the parents prefer that their children be in one of today's current district schools. But what the actual enrollment is that those kids comprise about 80% of the actual enrollment in schools. So there is a big gap between what people want their kids to have and what they do have. The question is why? And we sit there and we go, well, it's because, and my kid is trapped. I can't afford a private school. I can't afford something else. I don't have charter schools. My state doesn't have widely available school choice options. There are a number of reasons. So what we need to show then is how captivity is that problem and what it is that captivity actually is and does. So what in a brief statement, captivity is government policy that has created this U.S. system of public schools that serve to entitle adult system participants to own the students. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So first of all, public school captivity is the entrapment of students in mandatory, government-controlled, subsidized public schools, which many families would not choose if the subsidies followed their children rather than following the schools. So I want you to think about what that really means. Public school K-12 captivity is accomplished through state and local policy. Remember, we said it was mandatory. Well, that includes mandatory school district assignment, and if you're in a big enough district, you're assigned to a specific school within that district. It also includes mandatory attendance, which most people think of as compulsory attendance, same thing. And the funding belongs to the school system. There is no way that you can say that funding belongs to the child who's being educated. You'll note that the first two of these are geography-based, and the fact that they are geography-based, the school assignment and the school district assignment, has caused specific problems, and we'll get into a few of those as well. So then we're looking at K-12 captivity being policy-driven, and what is the general overall effect of this being driven by policies. Now, what I'm calling the snowball effect then leads to a multitude of other effects, and that's what the next few slides are going to show you. But what I'm calling the snowball effect is that all of these mandatory this is mine, these students are mine because they are assigned to my school. They have to attend unless they have money to go someplace else. And the funding is mine. What those policy-driven facts result in is a belief by the adult insiders in the system that the students are their property. They are entitled to those students. So James Buchanan is a famous, not the president, James N. Buchanan, the economist, created something with a couple of other scholars called public choice theory. And in essence, Buchanan called it politics without romance. And what he was saying is that everybody, even those who deal in public service, are self-interested. That's the way humans are built. We're built to be self-interested. And the theory goes on from there. But his shortcut way of saying it was, it's politics without romance. And what the first thing is that we talked about in the previous slides is that the system owns the students because it feels entitled to these students and they can't go anywhere. That it's as if the system owns them. So again, these policies are the mandatory assignment and attendance, and the funding is school property. This creates a structure of entitlement, and I think it's really important to start to see this structure for what it is. This isn't just some bias, again, between Hatfields and McCoys. There is something going on here because of the policy-driven structure. So the system participants, and in this case always I mean the adults, they are self-interested. These participants then claim the students as their own. This then leads to the influence of behavior. So again, we have the fact, as Buchanan and others believe, that humans are basically self-interested. System participants will act first in their own self-interest. This means then that they will begin to make subconscious decisions to prioritize the system structure when they're making decisions inside the workplace, because they will be making decisions to affect their lives first, and only then will they work on affecting the children. This structure is cemented because the participants in the system, if they are altruistic, truly altruistic, and consider the students first, consider things other than the system, they do so at their own peril. because the system is cemented to be self-interested first. Then these same participants, because of that, will very rarely defy the system. They can be punished if they do in some cases, and so they just keep quiet. All of that leads to the fact that the student needs become secondary. Without external incentives, these adults will set students' interests aside, or at least they will subjugate the students' interests to their own. The students' interests will be behind their own in priority because they don't want to lose their jobs, or they want the raise, or they want to keep their job the way it is. So here is everything that we've just talked about just in one slide, just to wrap up so that you can see it all in one slide. And then what we want to talk about is the fact that we have a really good example already. John and I have interviewed Michael Bendis, who is a well-established constitutional law expert and an expert on the National Education Association and the legal aspects of that. And what he did was to talk about how NEA, from way back when, along with the rest of the education establishment, actually pushed to kill private schools, pushed to force students to attend only public schools. So this is something that has been going on for a long time. All right, let's stop there. Let's assume then that everybody kind of understands that what we're talking about with captivity is that it's in the structure. So the real question is, so what? What does that mean to all of the students and the parents and everybody else? And we've said part of that already, and that is that students' needs have become secondary to the adults' interests. The important part of that is that foundational fact results in many, many negative effects, not only for the students, but for all of society.
Well, Martha, this might be a good time to get into some of the established and hypothesized serious effects. And that's what I meant partly in my introduction is we're not even fully conversant in all these effects. We're still forming hypotheses, but there are some pretty well-established effects and some pretty firm hypotheses that we've already established. Get into that a little bit, if you would.
Yes, thank you, John. I will. So this slide here is just to say what really I've already said, which is we've got a multitude of often related problems that we believe that captivity causes, at least in part. These are not only educational problems, like, your child isn't reading as well as they should, they're not interested in school, they can't do math or other things like that. It also has to do with family structure and other issues going on in the society, in the culture, in a person's psyche. This can then relate to criminal issues. This can relate to financial conditions and economic conditions in the country. So we're not just talking about inside that schoolhouse. We're talking about a multitude of issues that we believe go deep and wide in this society. And we believe that K-12 captivity, in other words, the government-controlled public school system which keeps students captive, we believe that they are part and parcel to the cause of all of these issues. All right, so John, you asked about some of the issues that this might be. This slide just deals in a handful of these. There are so many others, but these are the ones that we thought we would bring forward first because these are the ones that maybe others have thought of already, and it's important to get these out there. John, you're the expert on the first group of these, which is the geographic concentration of negative societal effects. So underneath these, we show poverty, segregation, and crime. And John, I know you've done a presentation already on on how the lack of school choice, we hypothesize, concentrates poverty. Do you want to talk just a little bit about how the same kind of things might go on with segregation and crime?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me just deal with the poverty issue really quickly. If you're assigned to a school that's supposed to be one size fits all and it doesn't fit your child, you're trapped unless you have the money to go to a private school or to go to another attendance area other than the one that you live in now. And so that creates competition for homes in better areas, in areas with more popular schools. And that drives up property values. And that makes it harder for the poorest people to leave their assigned schools. So, in effect, we're concentrating poverty around the worst schools, which is one of the most terrible things that you can do. And it's a dynamic that results from parents trying to do right by their children. After, as a result of that effect, because uh, ethnic and race is still correlated with socioeconomic status, we've created a system where, despite Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, which declared official segregation illegal, we actually have worse de facto segregation in most, if not all, places than we used to as a result of first capturing the children, making it hard to leave their assigned school, and then driving up property values around better schools, which further traps the poorest families near the worst schools. And of course, with that, the concentration of poverty, we increase the pathologies, one of which is crime, blight, ghettoization, people calling parts of their cities Beirut, which is a Middle Eastern city that is mostly bombed out because of all of the fighting that's gone on there. It's a terrible dynamic, and our country suffers for it, and not just educationally directly, but also indirectly, and other effects that also feed back into education.
Thanks for that, John. I would encourage everyone to go to our website, the IOPA website, find the YouTube that we have on John's presentation with regard to poverty. I want you to imagine in your minds right now what you might see. What you will see is that the poverty is just concentrated in so you've got higher poverty concentrations in cities, and you've also got higher separate concentrations of very well-to-do people, and the two are not together. There is not a blending of people in terms of socioeconomic status because you have separated them so far. That's what's causing a lot of these problems, and it is captivity, we hypothesize, that's doing that, the lack of educational alternatives. And what John then is imagining, and I'm sure he's going to create, are maps that show segregation and crime in the same light, as well as perhaps other issues. John, if you're ready, I'm ready to move on from here too. With our next one here that I've put down is that the captivity is an accelerator of school violence. What researchers have shown is that the mandatory attendance at large schools has caused a lot of these targeted shootings, these targeted mass shootings. So you've got then the small feeder public schools, which feed into then the public school that is the big middle school or the big high school or middle to high school, where all of a sudden now you have thousands of students. We're not saying that violence is only caused by public schooling. We are saying that because you already have family problems built in, and these feeder students who are maybe barely hanging on in their elementary schools move into a big school where their name isn't even known, and then they become even more alienated. These things, we believe, are causing a burst of the mass targeted violence.
You know what we're what we're definitely saying is that we have very credible hypotheses in desperate need of exploration. We have issues here that where it looks like K through 12 captivity is a big, if not dominant factor, and we need to document that empirically in order to be credible and in order to drive public policy reforms to eliminate this problem.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. That's something I'm going to talk about a little bit, John, at the end of this, about how in the center, we're starting to hypothesize these things. And then what we're going to do is move forward, both with studying and what you do after that. So thanks for mentioning that. And then finally, the last one is it's definitely a driver of academic inefficiency in our hypothetical minds. We believe that it drives consistent and appallingly low student achievement. We believe it drives excessively high and ever increasing per pupil costs in the public schools with nothing to show for those increased costs. And because of these things, we believe it drives unacceptable achievement gaps. All right, now right here, I'd just like to stop because this is enough to be going on with if you're a newcomer to this issue. But what you need to know is that we're not just saying these things. We intend, as John indicated, to act on them as well. So what we're doing is we're seeking funding to do the research, to conduct the research, to answer these hypothetical questions that we've asked in this slide presentation, as well as additional questions. We want to get research to show that the structure of public education is at least partly at the heart of some of these really problematic issues that we've got in this country. So that's one thing. But then after that, we intend to do more. We intend to show that you can even after that, say a big so what, because the school choice movement is alive and well. And because of COVID, it certainly had a big boost because a lot of people took their kids out of public schools and decided to do different things such as micro schools. But you still have several states. That slide we showed way at the beginning that EdChoice created shows that we've still got lots of people who would, if they had the choice, choose something other than public school. And a lot of that is because you have states that don't have any options and people that don't have any option because they need that free public school. So they need some kind of subsidization of schooling. Because of that, I started to examine why it is that the current school choice movement still has issues. And so our next presentation, just like this one, will deal with our beliefs in the Center for K-12 Captivity Studies of why it is that school choice movement is falling short of accomplishing this nationwide. And we will go on from there. And we hope that you stay attuned to us and that you follow us.
Please stay engaged with us in any way that you can. Notice the email addresses and internet addresses on there. Please go to one or more of those and be in touch with us.